Living in Sunnyside Estates was not my first option, but the circumstances were perfect for my commute and the walking trails made it a perfect environment for Maverick. My service dog, Maverick, is a beautiful golden retriever that helps me manage my PTSD attacks after my overseas military tour. He's extremely well. Tread always wears his service vest when we are out and about and responds to commands perfectly. I know the Americans with Disabilities Act like the back of my hand. It's a big deal when you're relying on a service animal. But I never imagined I'd be reciting federal law to my HOA president. The first time I met Karen Whitfield, she was carrying a clipboard and wearing a scowl that looked permanently etched on her face. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA with a demeanor that suggested I should be impressed. I don't think I approved a dog in this community. She spoken with narrowed eyes looking down at Maverick, who was sitting rigidly beside me. I politely explained that Maverick was a service dog, not a pet, and exempt from pet prohibitions under federal law. She huffed, said something about people always finding loopholes and stormed off. I should have recognized the warning signs there. And then in the following few weeks, I received 3 various notices concerning alleged violations, my grip being a quinch 2. All my mailbox was the incorrect color black, and my trash can was showing from the street for perhaps 45 minutes following pickup. Each notice was signed with Karen's flourished signature, complete with a smiley face case that appeared more menacing than friendly. I complied with everything, not wanting to cause trouble, but I knew these petty infractions were merely the beginning. Then there was the HOA meeting, where Karen proposed a new rule requiring all animals, including service animals, be registered with the board and wear HOA-approved identification, when I raised my hand and said that this was in conflict with the Americans with Disabilities Act. She interrupted me and said that federal laws don't override community standards. A number of neighbors appeared comfortable, but no one spoke up after the meeting. Karen approached me and whispered, "If you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." Her breath reeked of coffee and intimidation. The following weekend, I was enjoying a peaceful morning on my front porch, with Maverick stretched out at my feet. I was reading the newspaper when a shadow fell across my lawn. Karen was standing there in her signature khaki shorts and polo shirt holding a spray bottle. "Your dog is in violation of the new pet ordinance for not displaying the proper HOA identification." She declared loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. I politely informed her that Maverick was a service dog protected under federal law, and that the HOA couldn't legally request special identification. Other than I added that rule isn't even officially in effect yet. Her face turned a worrying shade of red. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're over the rules," she spat out. "Walking onto my lawn if you won't cooperate. I'll handle this myself," before I could react. She aimed her spray bottle at Maverick and sprayed him full in the face with some kind of liquid. Maverick yelped and backed off. Pawing at his eyes, I immediately jumped up, got between them and demanded to know what was in the bottle. "Just a little vinegar and water solution," Karen said with a smirk. "It won't hurt him, but maybe now he'll learn to respect authority." I was livid, but years of military training had taught me to remain calm under pressure. I took Maverick inward, rinsed his eyes completely, and ensured that he was all right. The vinegar solution had stung his eyes, but fortunately, there was no permanent damage once I was sure Maverick was comfortable. I dialed the police 911. "What's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. I reported the attack on my service dog, ensuring that I mentioned that it is a federal offense to interfere with a service animal. The dispatcher took my information and stated officers would be sent immediately. 20 minutes later, 2 officers visited my door. I explained what had occurred, showed them Maverick's service animal certification and training records, and pointed out Karen's house across the street. One officer stayed to take my complete statement, while the other one went to speak with Karen from my window. I could see her gesturing wildly, her face contorted in indignation. The officer did not seem impressed by her drama. When the 2 officers returned, they informed me that Karen had admitted to spraying Maverick but insisted she was enforcing community standards. They told her that they had told her that interfering with a service animal is actually a federal crime under the Americans with Disabilities Act, punishable by substantial fines and possible jail time. Furthermore, her actions constituted animal cruelty under state law. They were arresting her, and would I be willing to press charges without hesitation? I said yes. Karen was led to the police car in handcuffs. screaming how she would get me evicted and how the entire neighborhood would be against me. Several of the neighbors had emerged to witness the commotion, and I heard one of them say, "She's finally gone too far." Another neighbor approached me afterward and apologized for not speaking up at the meeting. "We've all been intimidated by her for far too long," she admitted, glancing over at Maverick, who had recovered from his experience and was back to his calm, attentive self. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. Karen was charged with interference with a service animal, animal cruelty, and harassment. Her first court appearance was a circus. She appeared in designer clothing, with an expensive lawyer who became progressively more uncomfortable. As the evidence piled up against her, the judge was especially stern in going over the case, pointing out that community rules never take priority over federal law, especially when it comes to disability accommodations. While awaiting trial, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I attended with Maverick, and to my surprise, nearly all the homeowners in the community showed up. The vice president of the board tabled a motion of no confidence in Karen's leadership, citing her reckless behavior that has exposed our community to legal liability. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed from the board. Effective immediately, somebody had even gone and made new name tags for the board members' table, and Karen's was conspicuously missing the criminal case. Ended with Karen pleading guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for not getting a longer jail sentence. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in county jail, a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter, and mandatory education classes on disability rights. As the sentence was read, Karen's face went through shock, anger, and finally a dawning awareness of the effect of her actions. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she protested weakly, as the bailiff came near. The judge leaned forward and answered the most important rule. "Miss Whitfield is to follow the law of the land, which protects service animals and the people who depend on them." As Karen was led away to begin her jail sentence, our eyes met briefly across the courtroom. The entitlement and arrogance that had once marked her face were gone, replaced by the humbled look of someone who had finally run up against a rule she couldn't bend or break. She mouthed something that might have been "isn't completed," but we both knew it was. Maverick sat beside me, impeccably composed and attentive. The very image of the service dog professional he was. I reached down to scratch behind his ears, and he leaned into my hand, a small gesture of partnership that had weathered an unplanned storm and come stronger on the other side.